Hi folks, welcome to class 4 in the advanced resolve class for Resolve 11 2014. So we looked at primaries, we brought the project in, we've had a good play with primaries, which we did in last lesson, which I did stress is very important, but the base of every good secondary grade is that primary that you build everything on. Because everything you do centres around there, where your secondaries go and where they come from. So let's jump in here, and I'm going to add a few extra clips. Like I added some primary ones, I just want to add some secondary ones as well. So into our media pool, I can either make a new bin, but I'm actually going to add them into our primary bin, and it just adds on top of them. And then to add those to my primary timelines, remember I've got 2 timelines, I'm going to add it to this one as a different way of doing things. Go to the pool and select the new ones that I've just added, which start there, go to there, so you shift and you click, and you right click and you insert, would put them where the playhead is, append selected clips to timeline, adds them at the end. So I'm just going to go through some basics first before we start to look at the individual secondary controls. Turn on my waveforms, though I do find that in grading secondaries I don't use the waveforms too much in grading a secondary. And let's start with something reasonably simple. We look at this shot here. Now, before we do want to do any grading, we need to try and bring the fish out. Essentially, what we're doing with keys and secondaries, we're trying to bring something out of the background to say to the viewer, hey, look at this. Look at this lead singer. Look at this fish. Look at that bus. There. So let's go into our primary here, lift gamma gain primaries. I'm just using the center element for this one. And I'm just going to bring level down. I don't want to crush any information because I might lose information in the seaweed here. And I don't want to do that. Not in my first node anyway, because my first node is always that balance. So I'll explore a little bit and I'll look at the image and I'll see whether just crushing, maybe just set that. So you've got a little bit of daylight through there, like that. Now, I wasn't down there. I didn't shoot it. I've no idea how it is. Normally, we see things underwater being a little bit bluer. So I could leave like that, but I'm just going to pull a bit of that blue back, which I think is then going to help our fish there. Not much. And then you might say, was it really worth it? Apple D, that's going to make it so much easier to get a key off, just that little thing there. And just in doing that, it's just induced a little bit of depth anyway. It's helping him just step out of the screen slightly. Let's move that back over there now. And let's go with a new node, because we always have to make a new node. It's good to separate things out, use labels, especially when we're learning new things. That's a balance. Second node, client says, oh, you know what, I don't want it to look traditional underwater, all colourful, National Geographic or whatever. Can we desaturate it? Yeah. Well, it's too green. It's too blue under there. So you do. So you desaturate it like that. Then, of course, another client says, oh, hang on, we've lost that beautiful colour of the fish. True, we have. But they like the overall desat of everything else. You can then use a layer to bring back that. So do this. Node, add a layer. Automatically makes you the new layer, as you know. And it gives you a feed of colour coming down from your balance. Now this is where you do your keying. You don't key on the desaturated black and white one, because that doesn't look as good. There's not as much colour for me to grab hold of and key there. But as soon as I make the layer, I can see instantly I'm getting the same colour I had from node 1. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab still from where I am there. I would often do that because that just becomes my primary. Go to the eyedropper, give ourselves a bit more real estate to work with, and sample by left clicking and dragging across the fish. Now as we do that, immediately we see the colour of the fish is popping out of the desaturation. That is because a layer works in priorities, and we can look at the highlight and see that this colour is now having priorities over the desat. In that node, you don't grade in the layer mixer node. That has no grading power. It's just a combiner of the inputs. So how do we fix up this key a little bit? Let's go again to bigger real estate here. Don't just just experiment a little bit. Just click around and you can see, that's not bad. By holding the mouse and scrubbing across the pixels that you want, you can get a much better key than what we would have started with if we just started to qualify that. So go back and go something like that. Now, you ask yourself, what in the key there do I want and what don't I want? Now, there's some dark bits, but I'm also missing some bits in there. So go back, just check and look at our controls there. I'm going to leave that up. We're in highlight, we're in the correct node. Always check that before you start working. First thing you do is open the width up here. The width will open up to other colours. Now you may get a few colours in there that you don't want to start with, but then use your centre and move this control so it is sitting over the exact bright colour, sort of reddy orange of the fish. There. See, and it's moving now to the sweet spot of that fish, this colour. This red is the same as this, and you're moving these controls trying to define exactly what we're going to change. Bring in the width. This over here, is it darker than the fish? Now I would say most of it could be, and does it have as much saturation? So we'll start with saturation. By moving this up, it will remove the lowly saturated parts, which probably could be that. Yes, we get rid of a little bit of it, but we got to watch this wing here, this fin. So we'll try the same on the luminance, and we'll go to the low. Yes, that helps us with a little bit. High will be the bright parts. The very bright parts could be parts on the fish's back. Not so good. So we're pretty good about there. This new tool in here called the denoise, that will help to just fill in these little holes here, like that. Then what I would do is say we have to garbage mask this away. Can't get rid of that. It's going to be the same colour as part of the fish's back. This bit of coral, just turn on a very quick garbage mask here. Now, there will be times. Do not spend hours and hours trying to key something. There will be times when it just won't key. There's something in the picture, has exactly the same colour, and that won't work. Yeah? Sure, get it right if you can do better, but at times when it's easy to draw a shape like this and move on. Highlight there. Now all the colour is there. I'm not going to talk about tracking that now. That's not part of that lesson. But in layer, I've not done any grading. All it's done is pull the key from here, and the colour is coming down the little white line. It's filling in the keyed area and it's overlaying the desaturation. So I could go to this one, number 2, and I could make that completely mono, like that. I could change the whole colour of it. The fish will not change. If the client wants it really blue down there, I can do that. That's helping the fish stand out. Look. What's better? Grab still. Always give your clients an alternative. Go, well, we quite like this. Middle, click the primary. There we go, and that was very colourful, but do you think the fish stands out a little bit more there? Give them an option. Sometimes you will find clients don't quite know what to ask for. They don't know that they need more depth, and so by giving them, they may not know what they like, but the chances are they'll know what they don't like. And if they say, no, I don't like that. You made the ocean too blue, looks unnatural, the coral doesn't look right. So it's a process. You go through a process. One of the biggest questions I get asked is the difference between the parallel and the layer. It's in my top 5 Resolve Ask questions. And it's pretty confusing. I can see they look very similar. They seem like they do similar things. So let's look at this shot and it's grading skin. Another thing I get asked quite a lot about. Let's do a little balance here first. Now, not too much I can do, but looking, she looks a little bit greeny looking here through the FSI, a bit warmer there. So I'll just see if I can just balance that up a little bit. Just make it neutral, really. Don't want to lose anything behind her too much. And maybe I'll just add a little bit of saturation overall, node 1. There, that becomes my balance. New node. Let's look at, again, doing something similar where we are going to roll off the background to half, and we're going to make it look quite cool. And we'll look at the difference between the parallel and the layer. So I've done that, and I'm looking for a coolie background. And if we use a parallel, which we know, option P, nothing changes, done exactly the same as the layer. It's brought that down here. Now we're going to key. Key again. Bigger viewer, you go for the enhanced viewer and scrub across. Nothing changes, but we can see something is happening here in the GUI. Highlight on. Maybe scrub from a dark part across. Remembering we don't want to get the background in our key. Go to there. Then we start to qualify. Then we start to look about what we can do. Width, center and the hue. Then we go down looking for lowly saturated or high bits. Do the same with the luminance. Then we look at these softs to see whether we can maximize anything by making it naturally softer. Not always the case. Start with the width. Pretty good. Says it's auto save. Move it back that way. I want to try and lose any of this in the background. Okay, if you don't need to key, we don't want to key. Into here, low. So these are the darker parts. So if I take it all the way down, the hair and the very shadow parts come back in. If I bring this control up, they start to leave my key. High will be the very saturated parts. Not the lowly saturated bit, the highly saturated bits. Probably like her cheek and her lips. Same with the luminance. The very dark parts are down here. If I bring it up, I will lose the darker bits, the hair. Highs, the same. Bring that down, I lose the cheek because the cheek is quite bright. Now you can look at the softs here. Now, not always will the softs do anything. It just tends to roll off the key a little bit too much. The presets you get with the softs are pretty good. So it's the angle. It's the slope angle of how it graduates between a yellow and a red. It just softens that down a bit. Symmetry, that means you can grade on either side of it like this. You see how it's moving either side between the red and the yellow and the green and the yellow. So you got some little holes here. We can play with the black clip and just see whether that there gets rid of some of these black clip pinpricks there that we want to lose. And in the same with the whites, there, take the white down and see how that's just helping with her cheek there. Take that down a bit. Use a bit of denoise. That starts to fill in our gaps. And our old friend, the blur that has been there a while, use a bit of that, but never overdo it. Highlight off. At this stage, you spent a fair bit of time doing your key, grab a still. Yeah. In a parallel, nothing has changed. I will then come to my gamma and just grade a little bit of warmth back in. There. Tiny little bit, not too much, just a little bit, that's fine. Subtle, not too heavy. Now, if I was to do that as a layer, what would happen? Well, let's have a look. Let's just reset the color correction that I made. You can do this. Come up here, right click, morph into layer mixer mode. So that, in other words, turns it from a parallel to a layer. There. Now you can see we have the original grade coming from down here, and she looks like something out of Transformers. A little bit over the top maybe. Obviously I've not finessed it, but this is getting into your classic like orange and teal, very orangey skin tones, bluey teals, magentas through the background. It stands out a lot more. I'd have to do a lot more work to it. Though that is the grade I liked here, I don't necessarily like it now. I could of course back that off and still grade that down. Now let's give you one more example where maybe the parallel works over the layer. Let's undo this, and before we've got it there, we'll delete that like that. Say this is pushed. One more thing, I'm just going to show you a trick. I just thought of this. Let's undo. Go back to my hero parallel. That's where I spent a bit of time on the key. I'm going to grab that still, and I'm going to call that parallel, because this saves you redoing it again. Para. There. Undo. Now here, I'm going to make this higher contrast. Like that. And we are going to push that quite hard, just so it's nearly clipping it. It wants to be really high key. Yeah, and crush the blacks away a little bit. It's going to be quite a strong image. I'm not going to worry too much about that cheek because we know we're going to key that. Let's go to our parallel, Option P again. And instead of me having to rekey it, I've already keyed it once. Open up the node tree on the one I saved, display node graph, and just drag that key source there, or number 4, which I did the keying, and pop it on there. The key will be exactly the same because I haven't changed node 1. And that is where my key source is, so nothing should have changed. That, I am going to add just a little bit more blur radius to this now because I know it's a little bit more extreme on the background. Turn off the highlight. Nothing's changed again because it's a parallel and it mixes. And so far I've done no grading here, so it's got nothing to mix. So it's just showing me the output of number 2. Just bring, I'll try and do this so you can see what I'm doing. Just bring the highlights down a little bit with the gain. Then turn up a wee bit of saturation. Sounding Scottish now with there. The whole shot has to be high con. That's what it is. But now we have a bit more sat in there. I can turn that off. It's doing that. So we like the overall feel of it. Always hit play. You've got to have play to see whether your key works, to see if you've got a lot of noise in the shot. Maybe just tweak it down a little bit more. I'm looking at that highlight. I don't necessarily like that. I may roll that highlight off very slightly using my soft clip. I can do that downstream of it. So then I would add another serial here. And I'd go into that soft clip. See whether we can just roll that cheek off a little bit. Yeah, just there. Just a little bit. You can do that in individual channels as well. You don't have to do all of them. You just roll one of them off. So if you went into the 3 dots, ungang, then you might think it's just clipping. We're certainly not in the blue. If we look at our waveform here, it's not clipping out there, not so much in the green. This is where that highlight clipping is in the red channel. And now we can just bring that down very slightly. Just get that little bit more information back. All right. If I was to do that as a layer, what would happen? Let me just reset the grade I put on there, because we don't need to see that. Remember, a layer will send the grade through. So come here, right click, morph into layer mixer mode. Ooh. Now that looks a bit weird. It almost looks like she is sort of tone mapped all a bit wrong. And it is a bit weird. It doesn't feel right at all. And that is because her skin tone, although it looked right in node 1 when we balanced it 5 minutes ago, now it's 3 or 4 stops different to what our background is. So it looks very strange. Almost doesn't look right. Now we could work that and bring that up and grade it, sit on it and try and match it, but it's going to be a quite hard thing to match. So in that respect, when you only want to change the grade a little bit, parallel's good. Yeah. We'll do a little bit more on this because it's very important. There's still people never quite sure. But that's an instance where the parallel worked well for me. Undo. Undo. There. Now, I've not changed it a huge amount, have I? I haven't done anything on that one. That's just how it was. Yeah, that definitely not right. So, good instance of when to use which and why. So, in terms of our secondaries, we can use our curves as well when we are looking to influence things. And let's have a look at our friend here, the telephone box. Now in here, you have a new curve called a sat versus sat curve. So you can pick a saturation and then you can saturate there based on it. And you can base there. So you could desat this end and desaturate all the not so saturated parts of the picture, being Big Ben, being the traffic, and leaving your saturation only in the higher saturated bits, or take it down like that. So this is a new curve. With curves, you never get to see a highlight, or you never get to see something that you can blur and soften off. So I'll just reset it again there. If you do your balance, what a pretty new feature in 10 was, we're in node 1. Just see whether I even that out a little bit more. Remember, whatever you do in the primaries, if they're cleaner, it will help you key, be easier. Make a new node. In my second node, color corrector 2, I'm going to use a curve, and now I'm going to use the Luma versus Sat. So again, I can plug a point there. So instead of being not saturated, very saturated, this is going to be dark, very bright. I can bring this end down. So I'm going to desaturate my blacks, and this end down, going to desaturate the whiter parts of the picture. So it's luminance. Pick a luminance and then desaturate that luminance. If you want to make curves on these, this is this little guy here, this Bezier curve, and then you can just make this a little bit finer. Just make that curve like that. Doesn't look like it's done too much if we disable it. There. And you can look at that here in the highlight difference. Shift Apple H. We'll do that. Let's turn it back on. There. So that is showing us what we have affected. So typically with a curve before, you couldn't actually see a highlight like this. This is showing us the difference between node 1 and node 2. And in node 2, these colours are being changed. So basically here we have desaturated the darker part here, picking a luminance, and we've brought the sat down. So there, the sat has come down. So again, good way to do things. No right or wrong. Again, I find sometimes to do a quick grade, it's easier for me to jump into the curves and do something rather than spend some time keying, because that can take longer. Let's jump back out to our favourite sequence. Timelines. There we are. And again, we did this, and we did pull down a little bit of highlights on it last time, didn't we? Let's see whether we can get a key off the shirt here. There's not an awful lot to go on. The shot is a little bit warm. It's a little bit clipped. It's not the best in the world to work with, but we just work with what we're given, don't we? We don't always have a choice. So let's have a see whether we can make a new node. I just use a serial for this. There's no point in using any other node at this stage. Grab a selection of colour, like that, and then let's go to the highlight, and let's see whether we can get. This is quite a bit darker here, and we've got over the edge there. Now that is obviously a slightly different hue, and it's picked up a lot of more colours than just a blue. So keep on there. We can probably get that better and then bring back our width. Not our saturation low, our highly saturated bits. No, there isn't any. Back down to our low there. That gets some of the creases in the shirt there. High. What is this area here? What is that? Let's have a little look. It's probably in the width. Maybe we need to add a bit more width to get that colour we do. It's a little bit warmth reflecting down. Go back to your centre. You constantly go through them. Like that. And you may need to garbage down. Yeah? Try and do it as a key. When you're practicing, if you just garbage everything straight off, you never get to practice. And it will be faster if you can key it without. Zoom up an area. If you are not sure on your key and you think, will that be noisy? Here's one that will tell you whether it is noisy or not. If you do there, and you turn on this guy, highlight black and white, put it into loop, run that. Any of those bits that are slightly dancing around are going to be noisy. So they're the bits you've got to try and fix. So whether you garbage mask those or not, or you go in here and you try and do this by using our white clip. Yeah, it's helping a little bit, but then it's bringing a little bit more into his face, isn't it? Black clip doesn't help me. Fills in a little bit using the black clip. fills in the shirt if you go all the way, but then we're filling in a lot of other bits as well. Denoise can just help us there a little bit here. Still a little bit of blur. Remember to zoom in. Certainly better. And then it gets to the case where do what you need to do to makes it look right. So in other words, don't push things too much. Yeah. If things look false, the client might be pushing you to go, oh, that sky has to be a perfect blue, or we've got to change that wardrobe. But if you can see it's not right, then I know it's a hard thing to do when maybe you're not that experienced. Say, no, this is not going to work. I can see this is wrong. This might need to be high-end painted, or it may need to be rotoed. But if you don't say that, or you don't point out the problems, then it could come back and could bite you. So you need to point these things out to the client. If you're having trouble getting the top corner of his shirt here or something, you say, and they might go, no, it's so much better, just leave it, that's fine. Can you just blur it off a little bit more maybe? It's much better than it was. Then you've pointed that out to them. In terms of going through the controls, you just go through all of these and just cycle through them. As I said, the soft controls can help you as well, but the presets in these guys are pretty good. So your presets I don't tend to use that much just in the softs, but I always will have a little look to see whether I can just change this slope angle that just makes the key a little bit kinder. There. Having done that, would I copy that grey to there? Well, I certainly would for a try. Have a look. Yeah. Obviously, it's a different key. It is important that you check it out. And if you've done a garbage mask in there, check that out as well to make sure you're not copying a wrong garbage mask. Fixed secondaries. People say to me, oh, you know, I used to love the fixed secondaries in the old telecines and used to use those. Do you use them? The question is, to be honest, I don't use them. Like if we go here, and I've done a balance out, and I just want to change the blue. Let's add a bit more saturation. There, it is blue. Let's give it a chance. New node. Fixed secondaries live here, colour. And I just want to quickly change preset blue. Change the hue of the blue. There, not much is happening. The preset has given me that. So all I find is I have to go in and key it anyway, so it doesn't necessarily make it any quicker to use it. All right, so I end up having to key it, so actually using that preset that says pick me the blue, I can just change the hue without even looking, to be honest, doesn't really work. So there where your presets are. If you had a very strong cover, probably like our friend at the bus, telephone box maybe, so let's go to the telephone box and see what happens. If we're in there and we reset, turn that off, what we did there, or I just reset that node, reset the selected node. So in there I want to go to my preset again, color, preset, red. Obviously quite a lot better, has picked out some red there. You still have the ability to use these controls, turn that off, change the hue, there. That instance, when it is quite an obvious colour, works quite well. Whether you would actually ever go there and just change that without going through and qualifying and looking at these guys, I'm not sure. I personally don't. Even if I did that, I would still get in here and I would still finesse it a little bit. See, I can just move some of that stuff out the back with the denoise. You know, obviously I may want to roto that out so I don't see the buses. There's always a little bit more work you can do. Always. Always ask yourself that question. Have I done as much to this? Is it as good? Can I move on? And that way you improve. But really keying is just practice, practice. Try it one way, try it the other way. You may like curves a lot more than others. These colour ranges, I've never been too much of a fan about these, and I'm yet to really know whether that is better. So how these work, if I want to add to the key, I go colour range plus. I'll just grab still where we are there. So go into the plus, and then I will click there, and it will start to add things to my key. Probably not such a good example. Let's see whether we can go back here and do this. You have to come out of it, otherwise you can't do any keying, you can't use your eyedropper. So you go there, and it's a bit rough, and you think, well, I want to add to her skin tone. So you go to the plus, and then you just click like that. To me, it was always a little bit coarse. But you can keep clicking, and suddenly you'll get to somewhere like that, and then maybe you need to go to the minus. And undo. And you click on some of these guys, these bits you don't want. So minus, take away from the key, like that. Yeah. Again, if you like working in this way, then you can get that very close, and then you can jump in here, like that. Just beware though, you will need to, if you go and try and key another shot, that stays there, and you'll go and try and key and nothing's going to work because it's still down there. So you need to go back there, and then you'll be able to key. Thanks for watching out on secondaries. Practice with this material and try and get these nailed a little bit more before we dive into windows and tracking, where of course we can garbage things out. Thank you.